I've been playing a lot of video games lately, and I'm not like a huge gamer or anything. I've just been like, I don't know, in my free time I've been playing like God of War and what else? I'm replaying Sleeping Dogs. Have you guys played Sleeping Dogs? It's like GTA but in Hong Kong. It's phenomenal. It's a great game. Um I'm playing the Guardians of the Galaxy game. That one's pretty fun. And I started playing Skyrim because my girlfriend plays Skyrim, and she was like, "Hey, you should play it." And I was like, "Okay, I'll play it." And it's really fun. If you like Game of Thrones, you would like Skyrim. I usually just play like the superhero video games, like Batman, the Arkham series, the Spider-Man game, the Miles Morales game. I only ever really played superhero video games, but yeah, we're not here to talk about video games. We're here to talk about something else. But I just wanted to, I don't know, go down memory lane. Do you guys remember the Punisher video game for like the PlayStation 2? I think it was supposed to be based off the movie game, or maybe it was just a random Punisher game they decided to make where you could just brutally like murder like the villains and stuff. Crazy game, crazy fun game. The 2000 like the PlayStation 2 superhero games, even play like early generation console video games were something different. They had those Hulk games, the movie game, and then the one before the movie game where it was just nonstop destruction. Crazy. All the Spider-Man games. Um so what Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro. That was a crazy one. There was the first game which had like Carnage, Doc Ock, crazy stuff. But yeah, we're not here to talk about video games. In fact, we're not even here to talk about the new releases of comics that have come out this week. But anyway, welcome to the Pull List, a weekly comic book podcast where we talk about new releases and comic book news. But today we're going to do something a little different. We are nearing the very end of 2022. 2023 is just around the corner, and I really wanted to do like a top 10 books of 2022, but I thought, hey, let me do something different because everyone's going to do a top 10 books of 2022. I'm going to do the top 10 comic books of the decade. That's right. Comic books from 2012 to right now. Uh, and I just thought, hey, this would be fun because this has been a great decade for comics, also a really bad decade for comics. But I think there has been some really standout books that we definitely need to talk about. So yeah, I have compiled a list of 10 comic books that I think are the best of this decade. And yeah, I have a few honorable mentions. And just remember, all of this is my opinion. This is not set in stone as the actual best list of the decade. These are just the ones that I loved the most. So let's get into some honorable mentions. First up, Batman White Knight. Batman White Knight and Curse of the White Knight. And I haven't read Beyond White Knight, the new one, but it's probably also great. Fantastic series. All of them. It's Elseworlds. You get a lot of crazy takes on characters. It's really great. Written by Sean Murphy, also illustrated by him. Fantastic stuff. I'm also going to recommend Deceased. Deceased Volume 1 and 2. Amazing. We'll see how the third one rounds out, but the other two volumes of Deceased, phenomenal. Tom Taylor, Trevor Hairsine, really, really amazing stuff. Now, I did have one book on my list, and I had to look it up because I love this book so much. I had to look up the date, and it turns out it came out in 2011, so I can't use it, which really breaks my heart. And that was the IDW Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Such a fantastic run. And it's still coming out today. They're still doing more. It's really great. It came out in 2011, 1 year too early for this list, but man, I had to mention it anyway. And so yeah, I think we're good to go. I think we can jump right in. There are so many books, and it was so hard for me to make this list because I knew what had to be on the list, but then there were books that I really wanted on the list, and it broke my heart to not put them on the list. But yeah, so this is how I'm gonna do it. Okay, so let's start at number 10, and man, this list is so difficult, but number 10, Immortal Hulk by Al Ewing and Joe Bennett. This book came out in 2018 and just wrapped up. It had 50 issues. This is a different take on the Hulk. You know, if you like the Hulk, but you also like body horror movies, you will love this. This book is, I don't want to waste too much time on each book, but I recommend this book so much to people, and when people read it, they're like, oh my god, I should have read this when it was coming out. Yeah, I read it in trade paperbacks as well, but man, such a phenomenal book. You follow the Hulk, you follow different Hulks and different gamma irradiated characters like Doc Samson and Rick Jones and the Sasquatch from Alpha Flight or Gamma Flight. They're big in this book. Really, really phenomenal stuff. Super great. Next up, number 9, we have Moon Knight by Jeff Lemire. Whoa. Moon Knight by Jeff Lemire reshaped, in my opinion, Moon Knight. Like, I've always liked Moon Knight. And I know who did the run before Jeff Lemire's run. I think Warren Ellis. And that, like, reshaped, I think it was for Marvel Now, or right before Marvel Now. I don't remember the Marvel initiatives that were going on at the time, but it was around that time. And he gave Moon Knight a new costume. He reshaped what Moon Knight is. And then Jeff Lemire came in and just, oh my God, this will not be the only Jeff Lemire book on this list. I love Jeff Lemire. I love him so much. But Moon Knight was the first Jeff Lemire book that I read where I was like, wow. He totally deconstructs and reconstructs what Moon Knight is. And it's so good. It is so good. There are 3 different artists on this book, and purposely. Each artist takes care of a different personality within Moon Knight, and it's just so, so good. So next up, let's go to number 8. Of course, we have, and I can't believe that I have this so low, because this is one of my favorite books of all time, and that's God Country by Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw. This book is heartbreaking. This book is so sad. It deals a lot with Alzheimer's and just family in general. And if you haven't read this, then you need to. You know, it's action-packed, it's epic, but it will also bring a tear to your eye. It's just so good. It's so good. You need to read it. The art is fantastic. The story, it's very short. It's just 1 volume, and it's such a gut punch of a book, but it's also a good time. So next up, number 7, I'm going to put Secret Wars by Jonathan Hickman and Asad Ribic. This book came out in 2015, and it blew everyone's mind. Blew everyone's mind so much that the next Marvel movies, all the Marvel movies now, are leading up to Secret Wars. And I have no doubt we're not going to see any of this book in the MCU, but we can surely hope. This is a huge Doctor Doom and Fantastic Four story. It is so crazy. Doctor Doom, the multiverse is destroyed, and Doctor Doom pieces together a new world, a battle world, if you will, where just craziness ensues, and you follow a group of characters like Miles Morales and I believe Jane Foster Thor. And in this new crazy world where Doom is just God. And the artwork is crazy. If you read Jason Aaron's run, you know Asad Ribic's work. It's great. So next up, we're going to go to number 6. And this is just a fun book that I enjoy reading week to week. And it's still coming out. It's probably the most recent book on this list. But it's Nightwing by Tom Taylor. Yeah, if you guys know me at all, like, Nightwing by Tom Taylor is just a fun time. You know, Tom Taylor is really making Nightwing shine, and I'm so happy that he is, because Nightwing's a great character. Nightwing is a great character, and I know a lot of people are upset that he's getting Nightwing and Batgirl back together, but to me, I've always liked them. I can't say I like them more than Starfire and Nightwing, but I don't know. There's something about Barbara and Dick that I love them together. And I know some people will say, like, oh, but that's weird. It's like a weird incestuous relationship because they're both the Bat family. I don't see it that way. You know, like, I don't see it that way because Barbara never lived in the mansion with Bruce. She was like an outsider team member. And because of that, like, their young kid romance, I think is very fun. And just the stuff that's happening in this Nightwing run, Nightwing has a
new sister he never knew about, Tony Zuko, Blockbuster, this new villain, Heartless. It's just all so good, and I can't wait to see the culmination of it all. Next up, now we got number 5. And number 5 is Gideon Falls, also by Jeff Lemire, written in 2017. This is a series that blew my mind. You know, I was reading it and I read the first volume and I was like, wow, that was a good horror book. And then I read the second volume and I'm like, wow, that was a crazy horror book. And then I read the third volume and I was like, wow, what is going on here? And then I kept reading and I was like, this is turning more like less into horror and more like sci-fi multiversal horror. Like it is horror through and through. The artwork by Andrea Sorrentino is just hauntingly gross and scary, and then the writing by Jeff Lemire is just trippy and mind-bendingly crazy, and you don't expect it to go where it's going. And I'm a huge horror fan, and you know, when I read the first volume I was like, okay, it's gonna be like a by the books horror movie, you know. And then it just expands into this story that I did not see coming. So now, number 4. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty, guys. And this is Superman by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason and Doug Mahnke and a bunch of other artists. This is the DC Rebirth Superman run. Not the Action Comics, but just Superman. This is where you get to see Superman be a father. You get to see Superman be a husband, be a family man, living in a Smallville-esque country town, but it's not Smallville. It's Hamilton County. So it's pretty much just Smallville. It's pretty much just the Superman story, but Superman's the dad and his son John. You know, you get to see him experience his superpowers for the first time, and Superman gets to be that role model, and it is so beautiful. It is beautiful. It's a gorgeous story of a father and son who are both superheroes, and I love it. You know, you get Damian, you get Batman occasionally. I love Super Sons that spawns out of this. This almost made my list, but just the entire Superman run by Peter J. Tomasi was great, and I really am so upset that they kicked him off and brought Bendis onto Superman, because Bendis' run was nowhere near as good as Tomasi's. But anyway, let's move on to our number 3. So my number 3 is, and you know, this is where it gets really difficult for me. But my number 3 is Hawkeye by Matt Fraction. This book came out in 2012, I believe. And Matt Fraction, David Aja, and the other artists that join in, they knew what they wanted to do with this character. And Hawkeye's always just kind of been this character who's like, he looks silly and he shoots bows and arrows, and you know, he shoots a bow and arrows. Like he was never this like outstanding character to me. And then I read this and it just expanded my knowledge of the Hawkeye character. You dive into his past, and in his present, he's like this broken, schlubby man. And just his partnership with Kate Bishop and Lucky, the pizza dog, of course, is just so fun. It's just such a fun book. The panel layouts, the composition of the entire book in general, it's one of my favorite books to reread. Plus the art is just so dynamic and so pretty to look at. Like, if you haven't read Hawkeye by Matt Fraction, go read it. If you've watched the Hawkeye show, read this, because if you like that Hawkeye show, you will love this. Now, number 2, this is where it got really, really, really difficult. But my number 2 for best comics of the decade is Mr. Miracle by Tom King and Mitch Gerads. This book came out in 2017 or 2018. Man, I'm not a Tom King fan. I am not. I admit it. But when Tom King writes a good book, he writes a damn good book. I know I don't really curse on this show, but like, that's not the worst word. That's not the worst word I could have said right there. But Mr. Miracle is such a good book. We just covered it on the Off the Shelf podcast. That episode's going to come out much, much in the future. But while I was talking about it, I realized like I'm so underprepared to talk about this book, because it is heavy. They deal with a lot of crazy and just like realistic and human subject matter, like PTSD and depression and trauma in general. And the way that Tom King writes it to be this story of a broken man, but still finds like the levity and comedy and just fun in this, like it blows my mind how Tom King, a writer that I always say I don't like, how he wrote this. You know? Like, Tom King might not be a great writer, or to you, he might be the best writer. But when he gets like a 12-issue miniseries, he writes like the best book. And this is it. This is it. You know, I love this book. I just reread it. I reread it a couple times, like a year. It's just so good. The artwork just melts my brain. It just melts my brain. And it's crazy. The effects, the glitching, the 9-panel grid, the dark side it's just amazing. Read Mr. Miracle. I haven't read Strange Adventures, the Adam Strange book Tom King did, but after rereading Mr. Miracle, I think I'm gonna have to. So we have finally arrived to our number 1 book of the top 10 best comic books of the decade. And man, choosing a number 1 was so difficult because I was gonna put Mr. Miracle, you know, but there was another book that really, really touched me in a way that I have to have it on here. And that book is Spider-Man Life Story by Chip Zdarsky and Mark Bagley. This book came out in 2019 and makes me cry. This book, each issue of the 6 issues, is a different decade in Spider-Man's life. So everyone who has problems with current Spider-Man, of how he never progresses, how he never ages, how he's always stunted back to a little baby man-child, like, this is the book for you. This is the book where you get to see Spider-Man grow, where you get to see Spider-Man have a family, and where you get to see Spider-Man grow old. And the final issue brings a tear to my eye every time I read it, and I'm not going to spoil it because you need to read it. You need to. The artwork by Mark Bagley is phenomenal, and the way Chip Zdarsky starts in the 60s and then gets to the 2010s, the storylines, they do Civil War, they do the Clone Saga, they do Kraven's Last Hunt, and they all do it differently. So if you know those stories, they change it up so you don't know what to expect, and that's the best possible thing. Characters like Miles Morales are introduced. Dr. Octopus is a big character in it. Venom, it is a mind-blowingly phenomenal book and such a great time. And I love rereading it, and I can't wait to cover it on the Off the Shelf podcast, because me and Josh and Jason, if he's on that episode, we will all be sobbing by the end of the episode. But yeah, so that is the top 10 best comics of the decade, in my opinion, of course. So if you don't agree with me, it's okay. It is okay not to agree with me on these books. This is not objective. This is just my opinion. And yeah. So if you like this video, I hope the new year treats you well. I hope new comic books come out that blow your minds. And let me know what your top 10 favorite books are. And maybe should I do a top 10 worst list? I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't know when this episode will come out, but probably the last day of the year. That's what I'm thinking. The last day of the year will be this. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this. And go check out our other podcast, Off the Shelf. And if you want to, go on TikTok and follow my account, Being Off the Shelf, where I make comic-related content a couple times a week. And so, yeah, I will see you guys in the new year with more comic-related content.